I absolutely love the Universal monster films. I think anybody who is a fan of horror can agree. And since I recently picked up the Blu-ray set not too long ago, I decided to rewatch it for the Halloween season, and well, here I am reviewing one of my favorites, Frankenstein. Obviously, these films aren't for everyone. I only say that because some modern fans of horror might not understand these films to the fullest. It isn't necessarily scary by today's standards, but I think many people, such as myself, can appreciate it for what it is, and what it started. This film works wonders, with its set design, the environments, and the creepy atmosphere that goes along with it. The film begins with people attending a funeral. With the person being laid to rest, here comes Henry Frankenstein and of course, his hunchback assistant, Fritz. They are here to dig up the grave and take the body for one of his experiments. This pretty much set the bar for monster movies and bringing monsters back to life from the dead.
The moon's rising. We've no time to lose. Oh, careful. Here's the knife. Look out. Here's the knife. Here I come. Is it all right? The neck's broken. The brain is useless. We must find another brain.
We then cut to a university and see where Dr. Waldman, who is showing the difference between a normal brain and a brain from a criminal.
University. And here the abnormal brain of the typical criminal. Observe, ladies and gentlemen, the scarcity of convolutions on the frontal lobe as compared to that of the normal brain, and the distinct degeneration of the middle frontal lobe. All of these degenerate characteristics check amazingly with the case history of the dead man before us.
He then dismisses the class, and the brains are left there unattended. Fritz sneaks in and is about to leave with a normal brain, but when he ends up dropping it, he grabs the abnormal brain. It's so cool seeing how simple things were back then. You know what I mean? It was just like normal brain, abnormal brain, got the body parts, put it together, and there you go. I mean, this did set the bar for monster films, so, I mean, what can I say? It's just classic. Elizabeth, who's Henry's fiancée, has not heard from him in 4 months and finally does through a letter. It explains his work comes first, and that he is hell-bent on completing his experiment. She raises some questions to Victor, and he states he saw him about 3 weeks ago, and Henry stated that he would not let go of his work until it's done.
You must have faith in me, Elizabeth. Wait. My work must come first, even before you. At night, the winds howl in the mountains. There is no one here. Prying eyes can't peer into my secret. What can he mean?
What does he say then?
I am living in an abandoned old watchtower close to the town of Goldstadt. Only my assistant is here to help me with my experiments.
Oh, his experiments.
Yes, that's what frightens me. The very day we announced our engagement, he told me of his experiments. He said he was on the verge of a discovery so terrific that he doubted his own sanity.
They both approached Dr. Waldman to see why he left the university. Waldman states that his experiments were becoming too dangerous, and that he wanted dead bodies for his experiments. So then he took his work upon himself.
He was so happy with his work.
Well, you know, his research is in the field of chemical galvanism and electrobiology. We're far in advance of our theories here at the university. In fact, they had reached a most advanced stage. They were becoming dangerous.
I think it's kind of funny that you see all these people at a university trying to study this, and then here was Dr. Frankenstein just like working away, and little did he know that he was probably going to be more successful than most of them there, even though, yeah, it's kind of crazy. Now back at the laboratory, we have a classic setup. The storm, the laboratory, the scientist, and the monster. Everything in this scene fits so perfectly. The only thing you hear in the background is the storm, and then you hear the dialogue. Considering we were just coming out of the silent era of movies, you didn't really get a lot of music in a lot of places you would expect normally. So everything just fits perfectly. And these films being what they are in black and white really helped in hindsight. I mean, looking at this, years later. The experiment begins, and it is one of my favorite scenes from any movie ever. Right before Henry is about to do one of the last tests, Elizabeth, Dr. Waldman, and Victor come to visit him. They doubt he will be able to pull off such an experiment when bringing the dead back to life. Henry tells them to watch and see what happens. Everything about this scene is so suspenseful. As they turn on all the equipment, you hear the thunder and the lightning and the storm in the background as the body raises up. It is brilliant. And again, no music. And then, once the monster comes back down, they see the hand start to move, and one of the most famous movie quotes ever is heard.
Look, it's moving. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Oh, in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be God.
Now we cut back to Henry's dad. And Henry's dad's kind of pissed because he's like, well, why is my son doing all these experiments? He needs to get married right now. He's got everything he wants. Why is he throwing his life away for all these crazy experiments? And he definitely is in disagreement and wants to go see him. The doctor believes that Henry must keep the monster in captive, yet Henry believes that the brain will then develop. Little does he know that the brain that he stole was a criminal's.
Oh, well, after all, it's only a piece of dead tissue. Only evil can come of it. Your health will be ruined if you persist in this madness. I'm astonishingly sane, Doctor.
And then we have the first appearance of Frankenstein's monster, which is brilliant. Again, it's very subtle, and there's no music. And those zoom-ins, it's just perfect. Bela Lugosi was originally supposed to play Frankenstein, coming off the success from Dracula, but he then turned it down due to the extensive makeup. And there is a lot of theories, especially on the documentary that's on the Blu-ray, of different theories why he didn't do it. But he ended up eventually playing Frankenstein in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. Boris Karloff here does an amazing job, and his face will forever be embedded into people's heads as Frankenstein's monster. Henry tries to communicate with the monster. When the monster sees the sunlight, he tries to reach up towards the sun. This is where we see some emotion from the monster. I mean, it's very little, him trying to reach up to the light, but it kind of shows that, he's more than just what you see, you know what I mean? Obviously, he's portrayed as just this ugly thing and this experiment, but he still has some emotion in his brain. Fritz comes in with the torch and teases the monster with it, which causes the monster to go into rage mode, because Fritz is just an asshole. They tie him down in the cellar, and you can't help but feel sorry for him as he cries in pain, while Fritz just whips him.
Quiet! Quiet! Up there, you'll have the whole countryside on us. Come away, he has the strength of 10.
The monster eventually escapes, and when they sedate him, they hide the body before Henry's dad comes inside. Henry then faints, where the doctor is left to experiment on the monster. Of course, the monster ends up killing the doctor and escapes. I really do appreciate that the film obviously doesn't just focus on the monster, but it also focuses on the relationships between Elizabeth and Henry, who is having a really hard time trying to balance his work with his relationships, just with the outside world, really. Putting everything into this monster, this one thing that finally is going according to plan, and then it's just too much and it just blows up in his face. I kind of like that. It's not just about a monster going around killing people or that can't control himself. It focuses on the creator and the monster and everything else around it. Henry and Elizabeth are now ready for their wedding as Frankenstein's monster is off wandering around outside. We then see a little girl and her father, who leaves her to play. The monster comes out of the trees and sees the girl standing there. She asks the monster to play. You can see the joy that overwhelms the monster, as he has some kind of a positive side in there. It's not all just dark.
Will you play with me? Would you like one of my flowers?
The monster then tries to throw the girl into the water. Obviously, he doesn't know what he's doing. And he doesn't know that this could end up drowning the girl, and it does. So, you kind of feel sorry for him, because some people could say, oh no, he killed a girl, that's it. But at the same time, you really sympathize with him, because he doesn't know. He has a criminal's brain. But at the same time, there's a hint of being normal, and he doesn't really understand why he's doing these things. He doesn't know. So he's kind of trapped, and that's why we feel for the Frankenstein's monster. There is some criticism here. People don't understand how the father knew that the daughter was murdered or drowned, and how, in fact, it was Frankenstein's monster when there was nobody around to begin with. I kind of give this a pass, only because, I don't really see it that being that big of a deal. But again, some people actually criticize the film like that. The wedding's about to begin, and Elizabeth feels like there is something wrong, and there is. The monster sneaks up behind her in the room and scares her half to death.
Elizabeth!
And now all of a sudden we have this father carrying the dead daughter in his arms into the village. Everybody is just like, what the fuck is going on here? The villagers begin to get pissed and light torches and split up into groups. Henry is also left to try to find his creation. They eventually meet up and fight, but the monster knocks out Henry and carries him with him. This scene is very well done, especially once they get to the mill and the villagers are just surrounding it with torches while Henry and the monster are inside. I mean, it's just so you just don't know what's going to happen. They continue to fight, man against monster. The monster is fighting his own creator. He soon tosses him off where the villagers burn down the mill. What they did here was great, because the monster didn't kill Henry, even though he could. It kind of shows he still has a normal side to his brain, but he just didn't understand why. He was kind of just trying to protect Henry in a sense. But at the same time, he wanted to try to understand why these things were going on, because he just doesn't understand. I mean, he was forced to be created pretty much, you know. He was just It was just a shell, you know, of something that once was. Something that I like about these films that I want to throw in as a side note is how simple they are. Everything is kind of right in front of you. It's kind of to the point. I mean, these films started the cliches that people, you know, will say are in other monster movies or other vampire movies and stuff like that. It all came from here. So I kind of like that. You don't need a lot of explaining. So if you're watching this review and haven't even seen the film, that's why I don't really need to explain everything step by step. It's kind of right in there in front of you. And the fact that it's more simple and that obviously it came from this time period where these films started to come about, it really adds to it. And I really think that people will appreciate that if you sit down and watch some of these films that you're not too familiar of. I don't really need to sit here and kind of explain scene by scene or go that much into detail because it's kind of already there. I mean, these films are always running a little bit over an hour, like an hour, 10 minutes. So it kind of gets to the point right away. And I also like that it's just not about the monster killing people. It really focuses hard on the characters. So, I mean, what more can I say? And then the mill burns down as the monster is trapped inside, and he can't escape as he cries out while the flames burn. The film ends with them celebrating the wedding as Henry recovers. According to the documentary that's on the Blu-ray, some people did not like how Henry was written for the film, making him a bit more crazier than in the novel. Now, I can't speak for the novel since I have not read the novel, and I never really compared the two, but this is where there's always the split fans between the novel and then the film. And I think, you know, some people can leave it alone, some people can't help but think that, you know, one should be included in the other, but I think they did a really good job with the characters here, you know, writing and just everything kind of fit together. Now, even if I read the book and I said, okay, I kind of like this Henry a little bit more, I still feel like it just, the way they wrote Henry in this specific script for the film, it still works out, you know, it balances itself out. But that's just my opinion, because I can read something like Silence of the Lambs and then watch the movie and then, you know, which I have, and then think different things, but I just look at them as separate things, and they both cater to certain audience members, you know what I mean? So that's my take on that. These films from the 1930s started something really special. From 1930 onward, it just was increasing, just different directors came in, different kinds of movies started to form, and it really kicked it off. You know, this was the era that started it all. So if you're interested in seeing any of these films that started such a big genre of films, definitely check these out. And the sequel, Bride of Frankenstein, is great, and I might review that as well. So check it out if you haven't, and here's to the Halloween season.